peak body for volunteering in New South Wales. Grow communities and bring people together through volunteering.
You're listening to Let's Talk Volunteering. Today, we're talking with Graham Toomey about volunteering with First Nations Australians. The Centre for Volunteering acknowledges the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation as the traditional owners of the land on which our office stands. We recognise the importance of their connection to place and community on these lands and pay our respects to elders past and present. I also acknowledge the Muwinina people of Nipaluna, Hobart in Lutruwita, Tasmania, on whose country I work and live. Hi everyone, my name is Ben Hillier and I'll be your host on this episode of Let's Talk Volunteering. Today we're talking with Graham Toomey about volunteering with First Nations Australians. Graham's a freshwater man from the Warramunga clan of the Wiradjuri Nation and also of the Wongabong Nation. Graham has strong community ties with the Redfern and Inner West Aboriginal communities, as well as rural New South Wales. Graham has been working as a cultural and art consultant, advisor and facilitator across Sydney for over 20 years and has a wealth of Aboriginal cultural knowledge, contacts and experience. This episode will align to Standards 3 and 4 of the National Standards for Volunteer Involvement and give you some practical ideas as to how your organisation can meet these standards and strengthen your volunteering practice. Graham, would you like to introduce yourself and give a brief overview of the work you've done relating to volunteering?
Good afternoon. Thanks for the intro, Ben. I too wish to acknowledge country. I'm on beautiful Darkinjin country at the moment, paying my respects to elders past and present and the entire community. I pay my respects to my people, the Warramunga clan of the Wiradjuri Nation, also from Wanjayaban country, and acknowledge and recognise all the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that are listening today, and hope all your elders and communities are all well also. I work for a non-for-profit for 14 years. Much of my time over them 14 years at times was volunteering. It's a great rewarding experience to at times know that you're giving back and contributing in some way. I've also volunteered many times for my Aboriginal local land council in a place called Trangie where I was born. Also at times at La Perouse Land Council also. But I guess recently since 2010, working around volunteers and overseeing and instructing volunteers, just been a great pleasure to work around people with big hearts and wanting to give back in some way. So it's just been a great experience, and also learning from those guys about many of them are from very diverse backgrounds. So I guess at the end of the day, we're all sharing at times and learning from each other, and it's just a great feeling and a great pleasure, really, to just be part of that. And, I guess volunteering, it's just a great rewarding experience.
Yeah, absolutely. What have been some of your experiences with that kind of teaching volunteers, leading volunteers that you were talking about recently? How have you found that?
Look, it's very easy because I guess most volunteer people I've worked with have been doing it a long time, and they rock up the first day with good intentions and experience in working as a volunteer, very adaptable and willing to work closely with people. So I think their heart's in the right place, which makes people like myself who are supervising and overseeing people a lot easier. But I guess, also part of that introduction into the workplace, my role was about trying to give them a bit of a background into Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islander people and the workplace. So I think that's crucial to any organisation that are bringing in Aboriginal and Torres Strait people, making them try and feel welcome, building trust with them. And I guess it's just giving them, an insight as to what they're going to be doing, very clear about that, and just supporting them along the way.
Fantastic. Do you find that there are any major differences between the way that volunteering's done in First Nations communities as opposed to with non-Indigenous communities?
Yeah, well, there's probably many, and many communities are different. But I think, some of them very remote communities, I could imagine language is a big one. Some fellas probably speak English and can communicate properly, but sometimes their communities are just using their own language. So I guess that makes it difficult for volunteers to be in that space. Many of them are obviously disadvantaged and very vulnerable, but there's many communities like that, many Australians like that. So that's probably an issue. We're very diverse, 350 different nations. So being mindful that not everyone's the same, and just I guess rocking up and having a willingness to fit in, having some cultural knowledge obviously before going there would help, but understanding that our ancient values and beliefs are still very strong with us. So yeah, but a willingness to learn along the way and really valuing what that cultural knowledge is being shared with and really respecting that. So, I guess turning up and showing respect, using the right words, would go a long way to giving someone a good start.
Right. And in terms of that cultural knowledge, do you think there's a particular approach to volunteering in First Nations context that might be different to the way, say, a Western or a more Anglo-Australian volunteer might approach that same kind of interaction?
Well, these days, I think we're fortunate there is a lot of cultural knowledge around. I know the Centre of Volunteering has some resources available and stuff, but I think, just doing some homework, if you're going into a very remote community, obviously trying to learn as much as possible around that community. Yeah, and I guess people from different parts of the world who have Indigenous peoples, people can relate, and there's similarities in, I guess, what Indigenous people across the world of all faiths. So, but I guess, white Australians and white people across the globe, no excuse these days not to have an understanding in some way.
Absolutely. You mentioned earlier that it was important to build trust and foster a welcoming environment when working with First Nations Australians. What are some of the things that can be done to build that trust and create that welcoming environment?
Yeah, well, I guess, really being mindful and respectful that it'll be a challenging space to begin with, making yourself feel warm and welcoming. I guess, many of our people can spot people coming a long way away with their intentions. So I guess, it's just really about respecting and understanding that, we're very different and things need to be mindful of that. And I guess, hopefully there's some training or some awareness or an introduction from the beginning which will help with that. But asking questions is a big one. When you're learning, there can't be any silly questions, even though you might think it might be a silly question. It's just being open about that and asking as many questions as possible. That will show that you're keen to learn and fit in.
Right. Fantastic. And do you think that there are unique motivations or distinct motivations that First Nations Australians might have when they come to volunteer?
Yeah, well, look, traditionally, Aboriginal people were always helping each other. In a sense, that's volunteering. You know, our values and beliefs traditionally was about supporting each other through good times and bad times. Everyone was there to assist with, each other. So I guess that, in many ways, those communities are one big family. So it's just understanding that, and really valuing that, potentially, fitting in with an organisation, volunteering, that will, make you a family member. But look, I think for our people, it's just, ensuring that the workplace is appropriate. There's the proper purpose there that encourages the Aboriginal and Torres Strait people to be part of that organisation, the outcomes. What is my time and energy going to provide? What difference will it make? So, yeah, I guess the right sort of person and the right organisation don't need much motivation. It's just a natural thing. But, there's many challenges that we'll get to about just going and being a volunteer.
Right. Well, speaking of that, what are some of the specific barriers or challenges that Indigenous people face when they're looking to volunteer?
Yeah, well, I guess, Aboriginal and Torres Strait people, they're concerned that if they're working for an organisation, it might open up the past. Many of us carry trauma, transgenerational trauma, grief, fear, anxiety. So, I guess the workplace or the place that they're volunteering at, there might be a concern that getting in there might do that, So I guess that's a barrier for many of our people, but many people find strength from that. So it's not as though it's the end of the world in a sense. I think obviously these days it's very difficult giving up time because time is money and we all need to be making money, sadly, these days, pay the bills. Different languages, different communities, they're a challenge. I'm sure for some Aboriginal and Torres Strait people, ensuring the place is trustworthy. Travel might be something that's very challenging to get to and to get home from that place. The location, flexibility with time and hours and those sort of things in what the actual work might be, whether it's a safe place, comfortable place. Racism's a big problem out there. So being mindful of that, that's probably challenging. But also ensuring that the workplace is culturally appropriate, I think. But also volunteering, and I've seen it many times, many volunteers suffer burnout. They can do it year in, year out. But, my experiences with Gunawira and the people that we had, I think the longest we had volunteers for maybe 4 or 5 years. And many of them had just had busy lives and many of them were traveling a long distance. It took up a lot of energy. So,
right.
But also the work itself, I think, can mentally be challenging.
Right. Do you have any advice for how to address some of these barriers and challenges?
Well, having supervision, having support around to provide to those volunteers is essential. So I guess, having team meetings and meetings where people can sit and talk and share those sort of things. I guess self-care is a big one. So everyone has a different way of looking after themselves. So I think fundamentally it's about ensuring that they feel supported and they can come and approach the supervisor or the manager or the people looking after them at all times. Yeah.
Fantastic. Do you think there are any particular strengths or advantages to the ways that Aboriginal Australians approach volunteering in their communities?
Yeah, well, I touched on it a little bit before. Family, like one big family, in a way. And part of being in a family is having responsibilities and obligations. So being responsible for providing care and support is a big one. It's a big strength that we have, understanding each other, relating to each other, and we can Aboriginal and Torres Strait people can relate to many, many things, even though we might be on the other side of the Australia. So, as I said, the trauma, transgenerational trauma, the history, those sort of things, we're all connected to that in some way. So we understand that traditional ways and values, those beliefs and values are great strengths for us because some of those practices, as we just touched on with the challenges, can be a way that a person can look after themselves. So healing, being empowered from culture is a big one. So culture is healing for us. So I think everything falls under that, and I'm sure a lot of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people practice some of those things each day. So ensuring that workplaces allow Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people time to do that would be also important. But I guess one of the other strengths is, as we're calling it these days, truth telling, and a lot of sharing of the past and of our pain and fear and trauma can give an individual great strength. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much some of the strengths.
Fantastic. Well, for our final question, is there anything else around this topic you'd like to comment on?
Look, I just think that there's a great shift happening in this country, and it has probably been going on for maybe a decade. And I think, white Australians, many probably don't realise that they're the reason why there is a shift in this country, and their willingness to respect and sit and listen and learn about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people causes a wave that goes out into all communities across Australia that educates people. And I think, that's such a powerful thing. I've seen it myself for the last 15 years. And the people that have worked around me and what I've shared and what they've shared with me is I've shared that with family, friends and communities as well. So I think, everyone probably gets it as far as learning from each other, respecting from each other is a way that we can all start to know each other a little bit better, and so that we can walk into the future being, understanding each other a lot better. So getting young people, and, I've worked a lot in preschools, and it's just amazing that in preschools that children at 4 or 5 years are learning about Aboriginal culture. And that's going to eliminate, hopefully, as they grow and shape themselves into feeling that not just Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, but people of colour are less than the old white fella. So I think that, some really powerful things going on. I think we're all storytellers in ways. Some are good, better than others, but we're all storytellers. We all got a story to share. And I think, as I said, that shift that's going on for an Aboriginal person to see that going on is very inspiring and brings hope that there's a better world in front of us because of that. So I guess, to all the white fellas listening, when I say white fellas, I'm not being disrespectful, just how I talk. But I think, you have great power, And that doesn't mean you abuse it, but just get out there and try and learn as much as us as possible. And, don't be afraid to share that.
Fantastic. That's really encouraging, Graham. That's great to hear. Well, thank you, Graham, for your time today and for sharing your advice and expertise. What can people do if they want to find out a little bit more about the work you do?
Look, my website, www.grahamtoomey.com, got a little bit about what I do and stuff, but send me an email anytime. Happy to take questions or to assist in any way. Yeah, but appreciate everyone listening. I appreciate Ben and the Centre of Volunteering giving me the opportunity to share what I feel is how you can work with Aboriginal and Torres Strait people. And our people, if any of our people are out there listening, I hope you're all well, and I hope that things remain that way.
Fantastic. Thank you again for your time, Graham. I hope the listeners have found today's show interesting and enlightening, and I look forward to bringing you all the next episode. Bye for now.
You've been listening to Voices of Volunteering, presented by the Centre for Volunteering. For resources, tools, training and news, head over to our website volunteering.com.au.